Despite earning millions of dollars as America's sweetheart, Ricky Nelson was unable to purchase movie tickets. All the music money was under his father's hands. Ricky was instructed to gather Coke bottles for change when he asked for pocket money. The idealized family image concealed a more sinister reality behind music. His own parents tricked him in a bargain that robbed both his youth and his wealth, according to recently uncovered contracts. It's hardly the worst part, though. What actually transpired in those final years before the plane accident is revealed by new evidence. Everything you thought you knew about the most well-known family in America will be destroyed by the reality. Someone else wrote the storyline into which he was born. Eric Hilliard Nelson was born in Teaneck, New Jersey, on May 8, 1940. However, his name had already been practiced on microphones and woven into studio contracts before he was even able to crawl. With a baton in one hand and a vision in the other, his music father, A.Z. Nelson, had already navigated the big band era. Long before Ricky learned to stand, his mother, Harriet Hilliard, had been a vaudeville singer and a cinema reel smiler. Their notoriety was not ephemeral. Every week, it was incorporated into living rooms all throughout America. And by October 1944, A.Z. and Harriet's exploits had made their family the nation's first sitcom royalty. There were no bedtime tales or skin knees to be heard in the home where Ricky grew up. It throbbed with pencil-marked scripts, lighting checks, and rehearsals. Harriet was teaching him how to regulate his breathing in between verses even before he was in preschool. He was never sent to school by her. He couldn't sing a note without cracking till she was satisfied. It was not Ricky who asked to be a performer. His father's desire and his mother's routine formed him like a product being polished for a display window. His name had already appeared on call sheets by the time he was 4 years old. When he was 8 years old, he entered the sound booth to take his place as the kid actor on the family's radio program. Nobody inquired about his readiness. The plan did not include that. He was a sickly boy, slender, quiet, with skin that didn't appear to be designed for cameras, and a chest that wet through the night. He spent more time in bed due to his asthma than during recess. He was not brash or noisy. He spoke slowly and perceptively, seeing the world from behind a wall of parental scripts and studio lights. However, audiences didn't see the sick child when Ricky and David finally performed on the music radios in 1949. Jokes were heard by them. They heard the timing. Even though Ricky was merely following instructions behind the scenes, they could hear a little boy blossoming into a natural. The broadcast attracted 20 million weekly listeners in a few of months. At 9 years old, Ricky was earning $200 every episode. Today, that would be about $4,500, but he didn't get any of it. The money was retained by A.Z. Everything. Ricky's stipend was so meager that it hardly covered snacks. Ricky's father was exchanging his son's celebrity for investments, furnishings, and real estate, while other children swapped baseball cards. Ricky had $500,000 by the time he was 16, which is more than 5.7 million today. However, he was unable to touch any of it. He was paying 93% of his salary in taxes at the age of 18. He once had to search through Coke bottles for change simply to take a girl to the movies. After the family relocated to Hollywood in 1952, the radio program was turned into a television program. The on-screen living room was more than a set. The genuine one was reflected in it. For Ricky, however, the move to television offered even greater exposure. His voice in the ether was vanished. He didn't like being a public figure, a face, and a body. He was unable to stroll alone, make acquaintances, or arrive late to class without his father reprimanding him. Football games, sleepovers, and unapproved dances were all prohibited. "The family is your world," was what A.Z. would say to him. Ricky went into hiding. Not in a physical sense. He was unable to, but inwardly. The youngster backstage was rarely the same as the smiling, ideal boy on TV. He struggled with nervousness and frequently excused himself from shots in order to regain his breath. Before ads, he would get anxious. Scenes, wedlock advertisements, magazine covers, and articles about adolescent heartthrobs would make him queasy. They were all like masks he was unable to remove. Later on, friends would claim that he didn't know how to be himself unless someone pointed it out to him. The show won an Emmy in 1955, and Ricky's picture was plastered on bedroom walls all over the nation. With 435 episodes, The Adventures of Azzy and Harriet set a record at the time and ran for 14 seasons. Ricky was followed by it from the age of 8 until his 20s. His earliest crushes, dates, and musical awakenings were all manufactured by it. Because everything was presented as true, everything felt authentic. It was different off camera, though. The show wasn't merely directed by an Aussie. Ricky's music life was directed by him. Everything was filtered via a script created by someone else, including money, dating, and school. And Ricky was supposed to be on point. Producers concealed vaporizers just out of sight when his asthma flared up. Harriet reminded him that the family's image came first when he started to feel exhausted after 12-hour shootings. Red Skeleton's producer once described him as a strange youngster, although the strangeness was actually fatigue. Later, Harriet acknowledged that Ricky's upbeat attitude was frequently forced. His ailments weren't stops. They were annoyances that needed to be resolved. When the cameras stopped, he slumped while grinning for the audience. The money continued to flow. Ricky was making $5,000 a week between 1957 and 1958. That's more than music, $50,000 each week in today's currency. But none of it allowed him to be free. Azzy spent the money on the Cadillacs, the country club memberships, and their Hollywood Hills mansion. Ricky received a $50 allowance. He, music, once acknowledged that he had to get permission or steal change in order to purchase something personal. Ricky acted out even in high school, but he did so through pranks and absences rather than drugs or rebellion. To see what would happen, he failed English. He, music, skipped class in order to slip off to witness live music and blast recordings. He wished to avoid trouble. He, music, desired liberty. He discovered it in music. It was the one area in which he was not entirely under the control of his parents. Partly out of curiosity and part out of desperation, he started recording his own tunes. He desired a voice unfiltered by a character's song. Ricky Nelson suffered from asthma when he was only 10 years old. Not the type that went away in a few days. This one persisted, making him spend weeks in bed while other children ran, screamed, and lived outside. Ricky, however, was not sleeping. He was learning screenplays by heart. His father, Azzy Nelson, referred to it as preparation for greatness. Ricky was missing everything: the world, birthday celebrations, and school. On paper. However, he was succeeding in music. Ricky's position continued to expand along with the show and Azzy and Harriet's adventures. Illness and fame blurred. He continued to work despite his illness. Indeed, it was included into it. The pressure persisted. And as time went on, he came to view slumber as a means of healing music. It became a part of the work. What began as asthma evolved into a more serious condition. It influenced his perspective on childhood. It informed him that he was not a typical child. He was a financial investment. Ricky wanted a bicycle when he was 12 years old. Like the other boys, he merely wanted to feel the breeze on his face, therefore there was nothing spectacular about the music. Harriet and Azzy declined. Not for financial gain, not because the music was risky, and not because it didn't fit his persona. They didn't want reporters or fans to take pictures of Ricky appearing too unremarkable. Ricky walked, sometimes to school and other times to the music set, while his classmates pedaled around town. The impact of that bike, or lack thereof, was greater than they had anticipated. It has nothing to do with wheels. It has to do with freedom. And he was reminded of the things he was unable to have with each step. The emotion became deeply ingrained. He didn't own his life. His schedule, his mannerisms, and his grin were all someone else's. Music, the taunting began at the age of 14. At school, the kids referred to him as TV Boy. Ricky thought it was a joke at first, but it struck a chord. He wasn't among them. He, music, had two separate lives. One had pre-recorded laughing and studio lighting. He didn't belong in the others' cafeteria jokes and locker rooms. Harriet attempted to assist. She attempted to make the fictitious family seem real by setting up moments of camaraderie on site. However, Ricky was aware that the warmth was a stage. The more they attempted, the more he was reminded of his shortcomings. When the teasing continued, Ricky pulled away. Pretending on camera was more comfortable for him than attempting to connect off of it. He was being built, not growing up. Ricky Nelson earned over $500,000 at the age of 16. That came to almost $362 million in 2024. He didn't feel wealthy, though. He only received $50 a week from his parents. The others were secured. They claimed that it was to keep him from becoming spoiled. Ricky, however, felt unprotected. He felt helpless. He didn't even have the money one night when he wanted to take a girl to the movies, so he collected empty Coke bottles, exchanged them for money, and used that money to purchase the tickets. Later on, he acknowledged that it made him feel unworthy. He was a movie star. He was only a child counting nickels in real life, though. The distance between his actual self and what others believed him to be continued to grow. The dances were even under control. Ricky was prohibited from attending informal get-togethers or school parties. AZ wanted everything to be scripted, safe, clean, and chaperoned. Ricky thus stood among strangers that his parents had approved of. Attentively observed and instructed on what to say and what not to say. There was no danger, but there was also no freedom with music. He couldn't just be a teenager, he couldn't fumble through embarrassing first dates, and he couldn't whisper stupid jokes to pals. At one point, he claimed to feel like a star but not a human. Instead of memories, those years brought him marketing. Then everything changed in early 1957. Something ignited inside Ricky, music, when he saw Elvis Presley on the Ed Sullivan program. He was not considering music in relation to the family brand. All he wanted to do was sing. He pleaded with AZ for assistance. Additionally, Ricky, music, recorded I'm Walking in a Teenager's Romance in a Hollywood studio on March 26, 1957. On April 24, both songs were made available. However, Ricky played them live on his family's show before they were even available in stores. After watching the show, viewers rushed to the stores to listen to music. The songs were a hit. The Romance of a Teenager peaked at number 2. I've reached number 17 while walking. Ricky was no longer just the quiet boy on television. He was a teen idol. Verve Records was short-lived. They argued with Music Aussie about control and royalties. Ricky signed with Imperial Records in the summer of 1957. Everything changed with that deal. It was practically unheard of for a youngster to have creative freedom, yet Ricky was able to select his songs, approve the album covers, and select the musicians. Bop Baby, the first single, was released on October 7. Before it was even available in stores, 750,000 copies of the music were sold. It eventually exceeded 1 million. It rose to number 5 on the R&B list and number 3 on the Billboard chart. Unlike the wild energy of Little Richard or Jerry Lee Lewis, it was polished and clean. Ricky sold even though he didn't shake or yell. Imperial wagered on both rock and sweetness by pairing the song with Have I Told You Lately That I Love You? The risk paid off. Bop Baby's music was ranked number 42 by Billboard for the year. Soon after, he released his debut album, simply named Ricky. It combined his own hits with covers such as Bopping the Blues and Blueberry Hill. The album reached the top of the charts. 4 months, it remained in the top 10. Ricky had evolved from a TV son. He was the embodiment of adolescent rock. It was a brilliant combination of music and television. AZ continued after that. He included the tunes into the actual performance. Just prior to the release, one episode staged a fictitious studio recording of Start Up. Demand skyrocketed after just one music move. The song peaked at number 2 on the Billboard list when it was formally released on December 30, 1957. Additionally, it appeared on the country and R&B charts. Really, that had never been done before. That many lines crossed by one person. Ricky's reach was more than just broad. It was profound. Something new was set to permanently alter the landscape of American music in the summer of 1958. The Hot 100 is a brand new chart that Billboard debuted. And in a matter of weeks, one song rose more quickly than anyone had anticipated. By August 4th, Ricky Nelson's Poor Little Fool had risen from number 18 to the top spot. It not only topped the music, best-selling pop singles chart but also the Hot 100 for 2 whole weeks. That had never been done before. Nelson was broadcast on television in addition to the radio. All throughout the nation, he was in teenage bedrooms. More than 2 million recordings had been sold before the year's end. In order to keep the audience under control during the showing of his family's TV show, theater managers had to call the police. Thousands of letters flooded his workshop. There were some girls who wrote every day. He was more than a pop sensation. He was America's first true teen idol. Ricky released something slower on August 29, 1958, a few weeks later. It landed like thunder, yet Lonesome Town's sound was quiet, melancholy, and not at all like the rock and roll flurry music that most people would have expected from a teenage idol. The song appeared on the R&B charts and rose to number 7 on the Hot 100. That wasn't a common occurrence for white musicians in those years. The Jordanaires, who sung alongside Elvis, provided the supporting vocals. It struck a distinct note than Love Me Tender, despite comparisons. Teens claimed that music made them feel seen, especially those who were heartbroken. Letters poured in once more. The song wasn't limited to radio and albums. When Ricky played himself on The Adventures of Azie and Harriet, it kept coming up. A new generation was drawn into its echo of loneliness when it found a second life in Pulp Fiction years later. Then came 1959, when there was hardly any room for breath due to the abundance of hits in the music industry. That year, Ricky Nelson put out 6 singles. Music, all of them made it into the top 40. At number 4, Believe What You Say peaked. You made it to number 6, but never be anyone else. It's the 9th late hit. That year, his songs were on the charts for a total of 55 weeks. Elvis was serving in the military. Ricky was the center of attention. He made $5,000 a night performing. His label was opposed to the fire being out. Nearly every month, producers hurried out new records. The number of fan clubs skyrocketed. For a boy under 20, more than 9,000 formal chapters were established globally. His music alternated between gentle ballads and fast-paced rock. Kids weren't the only ones purchasing. Parents also purchased. He had a neat haircut. He was secure. He was all over the place. Then a crazy thing occurred. Nelson performed in New York in June of 1959. There were more than 10,000 girls. Hours had passed as some waited. The audience erupted in yelling, pushing, and running as he finished his performance. The police came running in. Music, he was forcibly dragged off the stage and into a car by them. Girls chased it down the street, climbed the sides, and pounded on the windows. The following day, newspapers described it as a riot. Other cities became concerned. Rock concerts started to hire more guards. Nelson's public appearances were subtly cut by his label. Teen hysteria became a genuine public threat for the first time. Pop music would continue to wreak havoc in the future. His album Ricky Sings Again peaked at number 6 in the same year. Before the year was out, more than 1 million copies had been sold. Sweeter Than You peaked at number 9 in the music charts. The accompanying image was what made the record unique. Ricky didn't yell. Guitars weren't smashed by him. He performed on national television in front of his parents, wore pressed shirts, and grinned courteously. That crisp image was effective. His parents had faith in him. He was adored by girls. Record labels began to imitate it. They attempted to create the next safe teen celebrity. None, however, have the same understated assurance that Ricky exuded as if it were natural. He released Traveling Man in 1961, a song that evolved into something quite different. On May 29, it peaked at number 1 and remained there for 5 weeks in a row. Nearly immediately, more than 6 million copies were sold. The song began as a demo that was taken from the garbage. Hello Mary Lou, its B-side, peaked at number 2 in the UK and number 9 in the US. Rick is 21, the album from which it originated, became a hit. The people was unable to get enough. Traveling Man was even used by sports teams during games. It was more than just a hit, it was a worldwide phenomenon. In other places, both sides of the record simultaneously charted. Few artists ever accomplished a double accomplishment like that. He had a European tour the year before, with 20 cities, 50 gigs, and 100,000 admirers. They filled venues in France, the UK, and Germany. On several nights, he gave 2 performances. Security was shoved aside by fans. Still a teenager, Nelson started to get tired. He appeared exhausted and pallid. The tempo was vicious. To maintain momentum, his father, Azy, arranged the tour. The objective was obvious. Take advantage of the fame before it wanes. However, Ricky's face was already displaying the cost. It worsened in 1962. In a single year, he put out 10 singles. Even for contemporary celebrities with digital studios, that figure is astounding. On stage in front of spectators during a promotional trip in Hawaii, he passed out. Despite doctors' advice to slow down, he continued to perform. Azy wouldn't cancel. Fans became aware. He appeared aloof. His voice has changed in music. The vitality decreased. Something had changed. And the glow started to fade, even as the spotlight, music, continued to follow him. Ricky received a huge, music, 20-year contract worth $1 million with Decca Records in 1963. It was considered a superb move by all. The Beatles then showed up. The audience, the style, and the sound all changed. Ricky Nelson's sleek appearance felt dated all of a sudden. In 1964, his single For You still peaked at number 6. However, the magic was short-lived. Decca Music attempted to guide him into country rock and ultimately folk rock. The fire was not recaptured. The once golden contract began to seem like chains. The world had changed, but Nelson Music still wanted to expand. He continued. String Along peaked at number 23 in 1961. His live Rick Nelson CD from 1964 featured a brand new sound. His band changed over time. He invited serious musicians. James Burton, one of them, rose to fame. The group focused on country rock textures and harmonies. It was no longer teen pop. Something else was involved. The future was shaped by something. In the early 1970s, Randy Meisner, who would go on to establish the Eagles, was a member of Ricky's Stone Canyon Band. Both Linda Ronstadt and Jackson Browne were influenced by the same musical sources. Ricky was involved in the construction of what was known as the California Sound. In 1952, Ricky Nelson made his cinematic debut with Here Come the Nelsons, at the age of 12. It was a family event rather than merely a film. The movie was a logical continuation of Azy and Harriet's exploits and provided America with a delightful look into the actual Nelson home. It was filmed at General Service Studios. The film, which had a small budget and a straightforward story about suburban living, soon gained popularity among families by appealing to post-war American values, music. To win people over, Ricky didn't require a dramatic part. The younger Nelson was a name everyone knew just by being himself. By 1958, he changed course. In the episode The Wish Book on General Electric Theater, Ricky portrayed a troubled youngster. Ricky displayed a different side of himself, and the event was renowned for its somber tone. The true breakthrough, music, came a year later, and it was raw, emotional, and not just the kid with a guitar. He was cast as Colorado Ryan in Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo in 1959 when he was just 18. Standing next to legendary figures like Dean Martin and John Wayne. Everyone was unsure. Is it possible for a teenage idol to perform in a serious Western? Hawk was correct in his assessment. People were drawn to Ricky's honest, emotional performance. For the first time, reviewers took him seriously, and the movie brought in $4.5 million. It became official when he was nominated for a Golden Globe in 1960, Music, for Most Promising Male Newcomer. Ricky Nelson was more than a music sensation. He was an up-and-coming, music, performer. He played Ian, music, Tommy Reed on the Army's Most Ridiculous Ship the next year, co-starring with Jack Lemmon. Filmed in Hawaii and premiered in December 1960, it was a quirky World War II comedy based on the actual USS Echo. The movie brought well over $3 million for music and gave Ricky another lift. Even while some critics claimed he was still green in comparison to his musical success, his charm succeeded on screen. It didn't bother him. Younger audiences were drawn to him. Following that, he starred with his real-life wife Chris in the 1965 musical project Love and Kisses, which was directed by his father A.Z. Nelson. The movie attempted to combine acting with music. Ricky even sang new songs to promote it on Shindig, but the movie didn't do well. It wasn't damaged, but it was sweet. Hollywood, however, had already decided. Ricky was too innocent for a more sinister part. The studios preferred him because he was pure, innocent, and secure. Outside of music, he only received 5 cinema roles. Additionally, every effort to introduce more edgy characters was turned down. No matter how genuine his performances were, the industry had categorized him as a teen idol and was unable to look past it. He wasn't menacing enough or gritty enough. Ricky remained marginalized as the 1960s ushered in anti-heroes and unvarnished storytelling. He was never given the dramatic opportunity in music that he deserved. The movie roles diminished by the 1970s. He played a chaperone on a Hawaiian vacation in the 1978 television film 3 on a Date. In 1983, he played Principal Pete Kenny at High School USA. The momentum had vanished, but the charm remained. These parts were less about a comeback and more about keeping him in the spotlight. Already his music was changing. Ricky started the Stone Canyon Band in 1969. This was no ordinary bunch. A revolution took place. In addition to Patrick Shanahan, Alan Kemp, Tom Brumley, and Randy Meisner. Before country rock got popular, he jumped right in. Lightning in a Bottle was captured on their live CD during the 1969 Troubadour show. Their rendition of She Belongs to Me by Bob Dylan peaked at number 33 on the charts, which was Ricky's highest position in years. This was reinvention rather than nostalgia. He wasn't relying on his prior notoriety. Bands like the Eagles and Poco benefited from the new road he was paving. Though celebrity is erratic, he was ahead of his time. Wearing a purple velvet shirt and bell-bottoms, Ricky joined the stage at Madison Square Garden's Rock and Roll Spectacular 7 on October 15, 1971. He had lengthy hair. He had a brand new sound. Honky Tonk Women, a country take on the Rolling Stones, was his opening song. The audience let out a loud jeer. They desired the poor little idiot. They desired Ricky from the 1950s. Startled, he sang one more song before stepping off the stage. He was troubled by the criticism. But Garden Party emerged from that painful period. He would never forget the message conveyed by the 1972 single, which peaked at number 6. You must satisfy yourself because you cannot please everyone. The industry had moved on, even though, music, the moment was successful. Following Decca's dissolution, Rick Sings Nelson, his 1970 record, disappeared. Playing to Win was released under Capitol in 1981, however his progressive vibe was disregarded because disco was the dominant music genre. 2 albums, both of which were ruined by unstable labels and bad timing. The world wasn't paying attention to Ricky's efforts to stay ahead. TV turned into a backup. He sung Garden Party in Loud in 1972 and The Love Boat in 1978. Music, although he gained visibility from his brief appearances, the music industry had already shut the door. None of his singles made it into the top 40 after 1972. His musical career veered toward nostalgia. Reruns and recollections have preserved his name. It was just as music, tumultuous offstage. Following her pregnancy, he wed Kristen Harmon on April 20, 1963. Music: Tracy, Gunnar, Matthew, and Sam were their 4 children. However, the marriage was tense. By 1975, Kristen's expenses and ongoing touring, music, had become unmanageable. They took their disputes to court by accusing one another of addiction. And in 1982, the divorce was finalized after over 20 years. Ricky was forced to pay $4,000 a month child support, lost custody, and had to pay more than $1 million in court fees. His family, once seen as the epitome of the American ideal, was in ruins. Then another strike was delivered. Eric Jude Crew was born in February 1981 to a lady named Georgian Crew, who claimed Ricky was the father. At a Playboy resort, they had first met. Ricky denied any participation beyond providing $400 in support each month, despite a blood test confirming fatherhood. Ricky had given everything to his 4 children with Kristen, but Georgian battled for Eric to be part of the inheritance after his death. Eric was excluded. The will was supported by the courts. He was omitted from legacy even though, scientifically, he was Ricky's son. Helen Blair provided Ricky with solace throughout his last years. In 1980, they first met. She swiftly became his traveling and life partner, working as a model and exotic animal trainer, music. She stabilized the turmoil. Music, they were inseparable even though they weren't married. Ricky's family, however, did not approve. He thought about getting married, but he never did. Ricky and Helen boarded a plane in Texas on December 31, 1985. Even though the heater was already malfunctioning, the flight was not grounded. In midair, the flames spread. The crash claimed the lives of Ricky, Helen, and 5 other people. The pilots got away. Ricky Nelson passed away at the age of 45. Even more agonizing was what came next. Harriet, Ricky's mother, objected to Helen being buried beside him. At the funeral, she wasn't even mentioned. After a modest settlement, Helen's family's $2 million wrongful death lawsuit was dropped. The estate drama followed. Lawsuits between 2011 and 2020 revealed $12.7 million in unreported royalties concealed in contracts with Sony and Old Capitol. Even those closest to him were taken aback by the music discovery. Ricky had endured years of financial and legal hardship, yet money had been hidden.